Kia ora, Linda, can you just speak to see that you're on, that we can hear you? Oh, no.
Koutou katoa. Can you hear me?
Aye.
O ngā mihi, tēnā koutou katoa. Pai ki koutou. Aroha mai, he mawiwi ahau. So I'll be coughing and spluttering through this. I did want to be with you today. I think more than ever seems an important time for us to have a wānanga and think about some of the things that we're going to be challenged with in the next couple of years in particular. I enjoyed listening to Rawiri. I think many of the points I might have made about the politics of transformation you made extremely well, and which suits me just fine, because in the end I want to focus on something else, which is not politics. There's always politics, right? We've always put up with politics, and I think I would like us to focus very much strategically on some of our challenges and risks, threats, but also opportunities. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge all the different sort of expressions of kaupapa Māori that are in our domain. So not only kura kaupapa Māori and kohanga reo and wānanga, but also those of you who are from the hauora sector, those in social services. In my role on the Waitangi Tribunal, I hear from a range of Māori providers who define themselves very much as kaupapa Māori. And so there's a, you know, whether you come from education or you come from health or you're in the corrections, post-corrections kind of world, there are these amazing initiatives by Māori that come under the umbrella that call themselves kaupapa Māori, and I'm always interested in why they've done that and what's at stake when we call ourselves kaupapa Māori. You know, what does that mean? What are we trying to say about who we are, how we define our work, but also what are we trying to say about who we not are and what we're not about? And that's where I think the political stuff tends to be quite clear in kaupapa Māori, because in a way, by defining ourselves as kaupapa Māori, it already kind of puts a stake in the ground as to what we're about. And it removes some of the weird wishy-washy language you can hear when people try and not be kaupapa Māori. So you hear terms like Māori-centred, Māori-friendly, pro-Māori, all right? And those, I always get suspicious with those terms. I don't know what they mean. They usually, to me, mean there's Pākehās in that space. That's usually how I interpret it, because to me, if you were all Māori, why wouldn't we say we were kaupapa Māori? That's the common sense way I might think about it. But I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see. Oh, I'm disabled from sharing my screen, Here Aroha.
Okay. Yeah.
In a way, this builds on what I heard Rawiri saying about some of the challenges for us.
Should work now.
So I unlike Graham, you're not going to get a whole lot of pictures, and I only have one slide, and this is it. Threats, risks, opportunities, and actions. And really, I've synthesized a whole lot of issues and challenges I think we have in kaupapa Māori spaces. And these are ones which I think you might want to rank them. Some are ongoing and were here like 12 months ago, 3 years ago. Some, I think, rise up the priority list in light of the new government we have. So if I just start with the struggle for acceptance, I think that's a continuing challenge. And it's struggle for acceptance even within our own world. And by acceptance, I mean recognition, legitimacy, credibility, those sorts of words as well, that all the kaupapa Māori initiatives are constantly having to prove ourselves, prove that we can do what we claim to do, prove that we can govern ourselves well, that prove that we're not going to waste money on having a big party, those sorts of things. So it's just this constant struggle that we have to try and be our different selves within a system that wants us to look like, perform like, you know, the most compliant agency or institution in the country. So that tension is always there. As someone who, you know, sits on a couple of governance boards, one in the Wānanga at Awaniarangi, but also one in the independent research organisation, that struggle for recognition, acceptance, it does, you know, it does govern then the way we respond and we act in the spaces that we're in. It does limit, you know, the full range of opportunities that we would really want to do. It limits us in the sense of we're always having to do our own risk analysis over whether we could get some of these things over the line. It also means that we're having to prioritize what things we push forward. In other words, we never get the opportunity to go for the full expression of ourselves. So our full development is often constrained because of this, you know, sort of surveillance, if you like, that's on us. I think something I've observed in my role on the Waitangi Tribunal, but also in other forums that I'm on, this competition for resources with other iwi and Māori organisations. Now, I saw that particularly through COVID in the health space, where genuinely fantastic kaupapa Māori providers were being pitted against iwi, because it was iwi at the table in the tiriti space. They were the ones who were like bargaining and like literally bargaining for resources, which then they kept, some of them, and didn't really pass on to those specialist areas, specialist kaupapa Māori providers. And it took a while, and they were like subcontractors to the subcontractors to the subcontractors. That sort of scenario is, you know, it's terrible. And we all know why there's competition for resources, that we're being pitted against ourselves. But I think it is an area where we just always have to be mindful that, you know, this has been happening for a while, and I've been really interested but also alarmed at the undermining of kaupapa Māori organisations by our own iwi. All right, because they are competitors in the provision of social services. And some of them certainly see themselves as providers in the education space. And, you know, some have been there for a while, like Ngāti Awa has been in the wānanga space, set up a wānanga. And then the kura are iwi space, are iwi who support their kura. But then there's a whole lot of other spaces where iwi are moving into tertiary spaces. And I think it's not about saying, oh, they can't be in there, but it's kind of understanding then the politics for us as we navigate these spaces, because the resource pool is not growing. So we're scrapping, or not, we're not scrapping, we're politely scrapping for fewer and fewer resources. And so I think there's a whole strategy, you know, there that has to be supported or, you know, thought about. This next one is related, and it's how we are positioned and how we position ourselves around our actual expertise. The one thing that I find stunningly absent when I'm in various forums is the sense or recognition that all of you in your spaces are like genuine experts. You're authorities over what you're doing. Your authorities in the world of education, for example, and in the te reo world, the kaupapa Māori world, the hauora world, whatever, you know, whatever the spaces you're occupying, is this deep, deep expertise. And it's not recognized. It's not recognized by the Crown or agencies with whom you interact, for example, in contract negotiations, but it's also not recognized necessarily by other Māori organizations and by our people, that you are real experts. And, you know, without you, our communities would suffer, would not have access to the expertise that they deserve and are entitled to. So I think that's a big challenge. How do we think about, how do we promote that expertise? Because it is actually really special. Because, you know, what happens is we often get put in the box, right? You put in the Māori box, or you put in the kaupapa Māori box. But, you know, many of us, and some of you were talking about Graham, you know, Graham's an expert in education, in sociology of education. He's been a principal himself, you know, he's led a wānanga, he's got this range of expertise. And then he gets put in the Māori box. And I think that's really a deliberate way to diminish the genuine expertise that our educators and hauora specialists, our community-based providers have. We are experts in that field and our own. I think the next one is how fragile our kaupapa Māori infrastructures are within each of the sectors, but also across sectors. I don't know if we have an infrastructure across sectors, but even within each sector. By infrastructure, I mean all the other supporting agencies, systems, resources, policies that should be in place to help our kaupapa Māori organisations thrive. It's been deliberately underfunded. It's always been a concern of me because, you know, I went to Wales in 1991 and I just saw a full example of investment in infrastructure, which was joined up at the time. You know, it was a curriculum, it was and a whole different examination department. It was the Welsh television, everything on the music and the art, performing arts, the sports, the community sector, all of those parts of a language revitalisation system were already in place in Wales in the early 1990s when I went there. But when I look here, we're kind of, it's like we've always been funded to just last the next 3 years, right? We've never been funded to thrive, never been funded to be able to fully express our aspirations and to really implement the things that we say we value. And I think that fragile infrastructure makes it really challenging to do some of the things that I think we need to do in the next couple of years. We lack a cross-sectoral infrastructure. Like I meet people who are in business who say they're kaupapa Māori in business, they're kaupapa Māori working with men's groups, they're kaupapa Māori in the Marakai space. So there are all these different amazing initiatives, and everyone's busy and doing their own thing, and it's all fantastic, but we don't really talk to each other. We don't really learn a lot from each other unless we're moving in those sectors. And we just hope each other survives because we all know we're in the same sort of challenging spaces for resources. And that really then moves to the next point about how busy everyone is in their spaces, being internally focused, whatever that space is. And in that space comes its own reo, its own language, technical language. Like if you're in education, you're, battling away and using the educational policy terms, which are really different from when you're in health. If you're in the health sector, if you're in some of the social services, if you're in the science, mātauranga sector, everyone has their own code. Everyone is jostling to get the recognition to be able to do the mahi that they're trying to do. And of course, with our heads down, we're not always seeing this broader picture, but we're also not always seeing our own successes and recognizing the success of others who are across the road doing their thing and leveraging from each other's success. All right, so we're like little islands of success, but not necessarily able to work collaboratively to build that success. And I think if we could do that, it would have a powerful impact in our own communities. And that leads me then to this next one about telling our success stories to key audiences. I think we're quite good now telling them to ourselves, but that can be, it's always good to hear our own success stories, right? But I think we also need to put them into spaces where people don't know anything about us still. I mean, that's the challenge I have in the wānanga sectors. I talk to people in Wellington and ministries, they have no idea, that we exist. And when I sort of ask them whether they've actually been to a wānanga, they look really quizzically at me and, admit that they haven't. But they would like to visit one day. I'm saying to them, we're 30 years old. We've been in the legislation for 30 years. We've existed longer than 30 years. Why don't you know us? I'm sick of us having to come to you. You should know us. You need to come and visit us. And in the tertiary space in particular, the resources that are tied up that go to other institutions completely inhibit what I know the wānanga can do. And I'm sure that's the same in every other sector, that because we're not known, policies, the pots of money inside policies are written as if we don't exist. So that's why, this game, in a way, of telling our stories, but of also reaching out to people, thinking about how, in a way, it's a whole marketing thing, isn't it? But it's how do we widen our circles? How do we include people? And that really moves on to this final point, which is asking ourselves, who are our champions? I do this all the time. So, you know, in the new government, who are our champions? But in the last government, we could have said, oh, we've got a lot of champions. You know, look at them. They're like lots of ministers. Well, half of them proved to be useless to us. So I think we have to like really think about who we can work with, who we can educate, who we can influence, that those things are really important. Now, there's some other risks and opportunities I haven't put up here that remain important. And consistent. One of those is growing our own capability, right? Not only the training part, the professional development part, the leadership part, you know, are we training our own organizational managers? Are we training our system people, our governance people? But I think we have to be so deliberate about that. I can't, you know, I've been on a number of boards where you'd think kaupapa Māori comes naturally, right? But it doesn't. People have to be educated into thinking about things in a kaupapa Māori way, that it's not just about being confident being Māori. I mean, that's clearly a part of it, but it does have some other challenges inside kaupapa Māori, which is why I think some people just like the generic Māori-centered kind of label, because to me, kaupapa Māori is a commitment to fight for us. It's a political statement about asserting our ways of doing things, our ways of knowing, our knowledge. It's about claiming those, and it's about defending them. It's about building from them, being very purposeful about how we do that, and not leave it up to chance or leave it up to the Crown or other people, treaty partners, recognising it and being patronising to us, right? It's us saying, well, we don't care whether you recognise us or not. This is what we stand for. And I think what I love when I hear Raukura, graduates from Kura, is they are very clear about Te Aho Matua, for example. They're very clear about the value system that they've been grown up in. And you don't hear that from a lot of other initiatives or a lot of other schooling types, unless it's a religious school, right? Whereas I think those learning to at least sing the same song, being clear about the same messages, having the same language that means the same thing across a generation, you know, it's important for keeping ourselves consistent. I think we've learned to bend with the weather. When it's stormy, we understand how to flex and bend so we don't break. But in that flexibility, we also know we have to retain the things that we've fought for, and others who are no longer with us have fought for. And it's really important that, you know, we retain that. So I'm losing my voice now, sorry. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm not depressed today. Well, I'm sick, but I'm not depressed about the change of government. I just think it's like a circle. Some of us are old enough to have been through this before. I know we're starting with a stronger platform We've got a remarkable generation of younger people who've come through a world in which being Māori, speaking te reo is their natural world. And I think they give me hope about the future and how they'll be. We're not going to go backwards on these things. We're just going to have to fight harder and buckle down in other areas. And I think collaborating with each other across sectors is one way to support each other and to support kaupapa Māori as a system change approach. But I'll leave it there, Leonie and Here Aroha. I need to have a big cough.
There's a button. Yeah. Yes.